Attention all viewers, shocking news has just arrived. Students from a renowned international school in Switzerland were originally planning a trip to the USA, but due to a sudden technical malfunction on their plane, they were forced to make an emergency landing at Macdonald-Cartier Airport in Ottawa. However, from the very moment these students stepped onto Canadian soil, an incredible story began. We never really knew where Canada was or what it was like, but the result exceeded all our expectations of the USA. It made us realize how naive we had been, says Elias Weber, the 18-year-old president of the Student Council, and his 24 classmates from Switzerland. Their worldview completely changed in just a few days. What exactly did they see in Canada that made these students abandon their plans to visit the USA and want to stay in Canada as long as possible? The story of an unexpected experience in Canada from students of a famous Swiss school. Listen right now. Hello, my name is Elias Weber. I am an 18-year-old high school senior and president of the Student Council at the international school Institut Le Rose in Zurich, Switzerland. Our school is a leading private educational institution in Switzerland, known for its annual overseas trips. Last year we were in France, 2 years ago in Germany, and this year our destination was the United States of America. Initially, our plan consisted of a week-long journey through New York and California. Honestly, I didn't expect much from the trip other than the usual tourist spots. Talking with friends, we just thought that if it's America, it must be cool. We knew almost nothing about Canada, only that it is a cold country somewhere up north. On the morning of departure, I met my friends at Zurich Airport. Everyone was very excited. There were 25 students and 3 accompanying teachers in our group. Boarding the plane, we were still discussing what we would see and eat in America. But during the long flight across the Atlantic Ocean, after a connection in London, the unforeseen happened. The captain announced a technical malfunction requiring a landing at the nearest major airport. The flight attendants asked us to fasten our seatbelts again. The atmosphere in the cabin instantly became tense. Looking out the window, I saw nightlights, but they didn't look like the lights of America I expected. The captain announced again that we were landing at Ottawa Macdonald-Cartier International Airport. At that moment, I didn't even know where Ottawa was. Sophie, my friend sitting next to me, found information on her smartphone and said that it is Canada. Right up until landing, I still thought we would just stop to check the engines and fly on to the USA. I thought we would spend one night in Canada and continue our journey. But from the moment I stepped off the plane ramp, I began to realize how wrong I was. The first thing that struck me at Macdonald-Cartier Airport was its efficiency. It was much more modern than I could have imagined. Compared to some airports I've seen, it was incredibly spacious and calm. But it wasn't just the size. The floor in the airport was polished to a mirror shine, and everything was organized with perfect order. Even more impressive was the reaction of the airport staff. When they found out we were students from Switzerland, one of the staff members tried to explain the way to us in French, knowing it is one of our national languages. Although his French had a distinct accent, there was a sincere desire to help us. Despite the emergency situation, no one showed haste or irritation. They explained all the details to us patiently and calmly. Passing through passport control also became a pleasant experience. The officers understood our situation and in clear English reassured us, telling us not to rush. I had rarely seen such friendly government officials. On the way to baggage claim, I had a chance to look around the airport, and I really felt how well organized everything was here. The signs were in both English and French, and very clear. All facilities worked flawlessly, but the most impressive thing was the behavior of the people. Despite hundreds of passengers moving back and forth, no one was shouting or pushing. Everyone observed order and waited patiently. Such a picture of calm is hard to imagine in busy hubs. That night we went into Ottawa and stayed in a temporarily provided hotel in the Byward Market area. I had no idea what would happen in the next few days. I never thought that in Canada, which I considered merely a transit point or a shadow of the US, an experience awaited me that would change my view on life. The next morning, the feeling of shock I experienced leaving the hotel and seeing the streets of Ottawa for the first time is still vivid in my memory. We decided to take the O train from Parliament Station to walk around the city. But from the moment I entered the station, it was like a different world compared to what I expected in North America. On the platform, the first thing that caught my eye was the behavior of the people. Despite the rush hour and the large number of people, everyone stood in neat lines near the train doors. When the train arrived, everyone waited for people to exit before calmly entering. It was an order that commanded respect. Even more striking was the atmosphere inside the carriage itself. Despite the fact that it was crowded, it was quiet inside. No one spoke loudly on the phone or ate. Everyone was looking at their smartphones or reading books, minding their own business. Seeing this, I understood what public consciousness truly is. The train car itself was also impressive. The floor and walls were clean, the light bright. There was no feeling of being underground. I tried using the washroom at the station, and it was so clean I couldn't believe it was a public toilet. There was not only toilet paper and soap, but even hand sanitizer. When we got out into center, near Parliament Hill, my friends and I lost the power of speech. Despite the fact that it was a place where countless crowds of people passed, there was not a speck of dust on the ground. Sophie even teared up right there. When I asked her why, she said she was shocked not only by the cleanliness, but impressed by the fact that everyone around strives to maintain this cleanliness. The shops were also impressive. In every store, goods were neatly arranged, price tags clearly visible. The staff, seeing that we were foreigners, greeted us warmly. Even if there were language barriers, they tried to communicate with gestures and smiles, for which we were very grateful. That day, there was an incident where we got lost because we didn't fully understand the local transit map. The map on the smartphone also couldn't accurately determine our location. We circled in one spot for more than an hour. It was then that a Canadian student approached us, noticing our confusion. This student's name was Liam. He asked in English if we needed help. We explained the situation, and he pulled out a map app on his phone to assist. He didn't just show us the way, but upon learning we were from Switzerland, he recommended a delicious restaurant with local Canadian cuisine nearby. He spent his time helping strange foreigners, and at the same time showed not the slightest irritation. Parting with Liam, we went to the restaurant he recommended and were again pleasantly surprised. When ordering food, the restaurant owner, learning that we were foreigners, slowly explained the menu to us and even asked if we had any allergies so he could prepare the dishes to our safety. Leaving the restaurant and walking through the streets in downtown Ottawa, I discovered another side of Canadian society. The streets were very clean, not only because they were cleaned well, but because people had a habit of not littering. I saw people who, having eaten something on the go, held the empty wrapper in their hands until they found a recycling bin. That evening, returning to the hotel, I stopped at a Shoppers Drug Mart. Here, I felt a big difference from what I expected. Although it was past 10 p.m., a young woman, looking about 20, was working alone. What was even more surprising, at this time other female customers were calmly entering the store. Coming from places where walking alone at night can be risky, here everything was completely different. The store employee, seeing us, greeted us in a friendly manner. When I said I was from Switzerland, she showed interest and tried to strike up a conversation. On the way to the hotel, I looked around. Despite the late hour, the streets were brightly lit. Streetlights were installed at the right distance, leaving practically no dark corners. Even at such a time, I saw people jogging, couples in love walking, and groups of teenagers walking and chatting. Everyone had a relaxed and natural expression on their faces. The next day, we had the opportunity to visit one of the high schools in Ottawa. It was a public school. Starting with the facilities, the school was already impressive. Every classroom had modern digital equipment. The library and science labs were systematized. But what struck me most was the school lunch system. Despite the fact that many students ate at the same time, everything went very organized. Each class had its turn, and all students naturally followed this order. While waiting in line, no one pushed or cut ahead. The quality of the lunch was also striking, a balanced menu developed by a nutritionist, and very tasty. And the fact that such a lunch was provided or subsidized was impressive. After eating, the sight of students clearing their trays and sorting their waste was very impressive. No one ordered them to, but everyone did it as a matter of course. Organic waste, plastics, and paper were thrown into different bins. Seeing this, I realized how high the environmental consciousness is here. In the afternoon, there was time for community cleanup, and we were told that in Canada, students often participate in keeping their school and community tidy. At first, I could hardly believe it, but then I saw it with my own eyes. Students distributed duties and diligently tidied up, picking up recycling, wiping boards, organizing materials. All this work was done by the students themselves. Seeing this, I felt a special feature of Canadian education. It not only gives knowledge, but also fosters a sense of community and responsibility. In many places, cleaning is solely the duty of janitors, but here they considered it normal to maintain cleanliness in the place they use themselves. That evening, I had the opportunity to meet Liam again. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop and talked about cultural differences between Canada and Switzerland. I learned a lot. Liam said he grew up seeing order and empathy for others as the norm, not because someone ordered it, but because he considered it right. Rules that at first seemed to me strictly enforced were actually wisdom allowing everyone to live comfortably together. I began to realize this. A small inconvenience for each person leads to huge convenience for society as a whole. This was the concept. Through the conversation with Liam, I got a new perspective on individualism and collectivism. In North America generally, there is a strong culture of personal freedom. But in Canada, personal freedom and responsibility to society seem balanced. This is the image of a developed society, I thought. Having lived in Canada for a few days, I discovered more and more. On public transport, young people gave up seats to the elderly and women. On the street, people naturally helped a person in a wheelchair. Kind people told us directions, us foreigners. All this was not an accident, but a culture deeply rooted in Canadian society. On the fourth day, I had the opportunity to directly get acquainted with the digital technologies of Canada. Liam took me to different places to show how Canadians use technology in everyday life. At first, I just thought it was a technologically developed country, but when I experienced it myself, I realized it was something more. Starting with ordering coffee at a Tim Hortons in the morning, it was already striking. Liam used an app on his smartphone to order coffee in advance. When we arrived at the cafe, the coffee was already ready. No need to stand in line and pay. The presence of such a system is impressive in itself, but even more surprising is how naturally an ordinary student uses this technology. Entering the O train was the same. Liam used his smartphone or card to tap the reader for payment. Inside the train, there was free Wi-Fi. Connection was fast, even in tunnels. For lunch, there was another interesting experience. Liam scanned a QR code at the entrance to a restaurant to join a digital queue, and we went for a walk nearby. When the notification came that our turn had arrived, we returned to the restaurant. No need to stand and wait. Time could be used efficiently. When ordering food in the restaurant, we used a tablet on the table. The menu was digital. You could see photos and detailed descriptions. Moreover, there was a menu in multiple languages. From ordering food to payment, everything could be done at the table. Truly very convenient. But amidst all these digital technologies, human warmth did not disappear anywhere. And that was the most impressive thing. The barista in the cafe greeted us warmly. The server in the restaurant was very attentive. Technology did not replace human relationships, but complemented them. In the evening, I tried using an app for food delivery. Liam showed me how to order food via smartphone. There was a huge variety of restaurants and menus. After ordering, one could track the location of the courier in real time. Within 30 minutes, hot food was delivered. Surprisingly, the courier was very polite. Seeing that I was a foreigner, he smiled broadly, said hello, and handed over the food. It was not just food delivery, but a manifestation of a true spirit of hospitality. From all this experience, I understood the true meaning of technological development. On the 5th day, I had the opportunity to meet Liam's grandmother. Despite being in her 80s, she used a tablet remarkably deftly. She said she shops online, books medical appointments, and even video calls with her grandchildren. It was a picture different from what I expected of the elderly in some places. The grandmother said that at first it was difficult, but there were free courses in their community center on using smart devices, so she learned. It is not that the elderly are left behind, but that there is a system that helps everyone keep up with the times. It was very impressive. This is the image of a truly inclusive society, I thought. In public transport, there was a similar experience. Seeing a person in a wheelchair in the subway car, several people naturally made way and offered help. No one ordered it. Everyone did it as a matter of course. Seeing this, I felt the maturity of Canadian society. We also had the opportunity to visit a hospital because Liam had cold symptoms. We went to the nearest walk-in clinic. The whole process, from registration to examination, was very systematized. The waiting time was manageable, and the care was excellent. The doctor even showed interest in me as a foreigner and explained the healthcare system in Canada. At the pharmacy, too, there was a pleasant experience. The pharmacist looked at the prescription and correctly dispensed the medication. Of course, he explained in detail how to take them. Such an attentive attitude caused me a feeling of gratitude. That evening, Liam and I went for a walk along the Rideau Canal. Despite the late hour, there were many people jogging or relaxing. There were families, couples, and groups of friends, each spending time in their own way. Importantly, everyone had a sense of safety and peace on their faces. The amenities organized along the canal were also impressive. The bicycle path was clearly separated from the pedestrian one. There were washrooms and other amenities. It seemed everything was designed for the convenience of people. That evening, returning to the hotel, I reflected. In Canada, technology and human warmth combine harmoniously. This is the image of a truly developed society. Just being economically rich or technologically advanced is not enough to be a truly developed country. I realized this. On the morning of the 6th day, the airline contacted us and reported that the repair of the plane was completed and we could fly to the USA according to the original plan. This should have been good news, but strangely, my friends and I felt confusion. The last few days in Canada were so impressive that we would have liked to stay here longer. That day, we spent our last hours with Liam and his student friends. We met in the Glebe neighborhood and talked frankly about the cultures of Canada and Switzerland. The initial awkwardness due to differences was now replaced by mutual understanding. The Canadian students also showed great interest in Swiss culture. They were interested not just in chocolate or mountains, but in everyday life and the education system in Switzerland. Such mutual respect was very impressive. The atmosphere of this meeting was radically different from the first day. The feeling of alienation due to cultural differences had now turned into a strong friendship. We sat in a circle in one of the traditional coffee shops, tasting exquisite Canadian maple treats. The interior of the establishment combined modernity and tradition. On the walls hung indigenous art, and soft music played in the background. This calm atmosphere allowed us to talk even deeper. Liam's friends showed great interest in our culture. They were interested not only in what is known to the whole world. One of the students named Emma asked me, "And what do teenagers in Switzerland do for society?" This question made me think. Honestly, sometimes we are focused only on our own development and success. But in Canada, I saw that young people are very involved in the life of society. They are worried about social problems, such as ecology and helping vulnerable groups. Another friend named Noah asked, "What values do you consider the most important?" Sophie answered on behalf of everyone. Before coming to Canada, we might have answered that it is freedom and personal success. But now I think that caring for others and responsibility to society are no less important. This phrase expressed the feelings of all of us. What we saw and heard over the past few days really changed our view on many things. The owner of the coffee shop, a man in his 60s, heard our conversation and joined us. He said that Canada developed to its current level not only thanks to economic growth, but, more importantly, thanks to the development of the spirit of the people. When everyone thinks about others, society as a whole becomes better, he said. The owner continued to talk about the history of changes in Canadian society, emphasizing multiculturalism and peace. He said, "We learned to value the freedom we have, and understood that freedom must go hand in hand with responsibility." These words helped us understand Canadian society deeper. My Swiss friends also began to share their feelings. Lucas said, "What struck me most was that Canadians follow rules not because they are forced, but by goodwill. They understand that these rules exist so that everyone can live better together." Sophie added, "I think Canadian education is very successful. It is able to raise citizens capable of empathizing with others." Sophie recounted that when she cried on Parliament Hill, it was not only because of the cleanliness, but also because of admiration that everyone tries to preserve this beauty. She described her feelings in detail. "We sometimes take things for granted. But here I saw how people voluntarily care for public spaces. No one controls them. This is true love for a common home." Listening to friends, I reflected on my own changes. A few days ago, I might have considered standing in line or sorting trash tedious. But now I understand that these small actions reflect the level of civilization of a society. When everyone makes a small effort, one can create an environment beneficial for all. The Canadian friends also frankly shared their view on their society. Liam said, "Canada is not perfect either. We have many problems that need to be solved, but we have a common understanding that we must make society better." Emma added, "We were taught from childhood to have a public conscience, but this is not a burden, but an honor. Bringing benefit to society is very meaningful." The atmosphere of this mutual, respectful dialogue impressed me very much. Sometimes between different groups of people there is a lack of such sincere exchange of opinions. Everyone is used to living in their own circle. But in Canada, I felt a culture of openness and acceptance of differences. People are ready to listen to different opinions and learn from others. In the evening, we moved to a modern food hall nearby. Ottawa's food markets are full of life, rows of diverse cuisines, crowds of people, but without chaos. We tried many dishes of street food: poutine, tourtière, beaver tails. Each dish has its own taste and history. The vendors, seeing that we were foreigners, enthusiastically recommended their dishes. Some even tried to speak with us in simple French or German. This friendliness created a special warmth. Over food, we continued our deep cultural exchange. One of the Canadian friends asked us, "When you return to Switzerland, what will you want to change?" This question made us all think. I answered, "I want to bring with me the civic consciousness I learned in Canada. I may not be able to change all of society, but at least I can start with myself and influence those around me." Sophie said, "I want to promote environmental education in our school so that friends understand the importance of waste sorting and protecting the environment." Lucas said, "I want to participate more in volunteer activities to help those in need." Hearing our thoughts, the Canadian friends supported and encouraged us. Liam said, "Changes do not happen instantly. But if someone starts acting, it will cause a chain reaction." After the food hall, we went for a walk along the Ottawa River. The river at night was breathtakingly beautiful. The water reflected lights from both banks, including the province of Quebec on the other side. A light, cool breeze blew. Despite the late hour, there were still people on the pathway engaging in sports and walking. Everyone looked safe and relaxed. We sat on a bench on the embankment, looking at the view of the opposite shore, and shared stories from life. Liam said his dream is to become a teacher, to raise more students with an international outlook. Emma wanted to work in ecology to help Canada develop sustainably. Listening to the dreams of these young Canadians, I was impressed by their purposefulness. They were interested not only in personal success, but also in how they can help society and the future of humanity. I rarely met such a broad view of things among peers elsewhere. At that moment, I suddenly realized what the real strength of Canadian society is, not in the economy or technology alone, but in the fact that people here strive to make the world better. When young people in society have such dreams, that society is destined for further development. When deep night came, we had to say goodbye. Although we were together for only a few days, we managed to tie a strong friendship. We exchanged contacts and promised to keep in touch to continue learning from each other. On the way, when Liam walked us to the hotel, I looked back at the night landscape of Ottawa. In my soul, there was a mixed feeling. Tomorrow, we have to leave this place that changed our view on life and go to the original goal, to the USA. But I knew that Canada had planted a seed in our hearts. This seed will follow us back to Switzerland and will grow in our lives. It will remind us of what values are really worth seeking, what a truly meaningful life is. Canada taught us not only external politeness and order, but also internal kindness and responsibility. This is the most valuable thing in our lives. 6 months later, I applied for a student exchange program at the University of Ottawa. Although I already spoke English, I was sure my enthusiasm was enough. Fortunately, I passed the selection and was able to return to Canada again. The feeling of delight when I arrived at Macdonald-Cartier Airport again a year later is impossible to describe in words. This time I was not just a tourist, but a student, which allowed me to understand and feel Canadian society deeper. Liam met me at the airport. The joy of meeting after a year of separation was huge. Life at the university became another continuous learning process. Studying and working on projects together with Canadian students allowed me to directly feel the excellence of Canadian education. Besides, through participation in various clubs, I learned what Canadian youth thinks about and how they live. Now looking back, that emergency landing at Ottawa Airport was the most important moment that changed my life. Through the country called Canada, I learned what it means to be a truly developed country and understood what kind of person I want to become in the future. And most importantly, my view of the world expanded. This is the biggest acquisition. Now I have a dream. After returning to Switzerland, I want to use what I learned in Canada for the benefit of the development of my community. One day, I want to become a bridge between Canada and Switzerland. And the beginning of all this was that unexpected emergency landing. What I discovered in Canada is not just clean streets or advanced technologies. Truly impressive was the caring spirit of the people and civic consciousness oriented towards the common good. This is not something imposed by laws or rules, but a culture that people follow voluntarily. The experience in Canada made me understand that true development is not when buildings become taller or technologies more perfect, but when the souls of people become richer and society warmer. Now, I want to become a person who can spread such a culture. Although I still have a lot to learn, I believe that the journey that began with that unexpected landing will continue. During my exchange studies in Canada, I had the opportunity to deeply explore different regions of the country. Every trip made me closer to this land. For the first big trip, we chose Quebec City, the city often called the cultural heart of French Canada. We took the Via Rail train from Ottawa to the east, and in just a few hours reached Quebec. The punctuality and comfort of the train impressed me. Such efficiency is admirable. Arriving in Quebec City, I immediately felt a completely different atmosphere than in Ottawa. If Ottawa is a modern capital, then Quebec City is an old city full of historical charm. Narrow cobblestone streets, majestic cathedrals, classical architecture. Everything told the story of colonial Canada. We stayed in a small hotel in the historic center. The owner, a Quebecer in his 60s, knew the history and culture of his city perfectly and enthusiastically talked about the origin and features of every landmark. Quebec City is the cradle of French civilization in North America. Here the heritage is best preserved, he said with pride. At the Chateau Frontenac, we learned about the grandeur of history on the Plains of Abraham, about the pivotal battles. But what impressed me most was the importance attached to the preservation of culture. Whether it be traditional crafts, old architecture, or traditions, everything is carefully preserved and passed down from generation to generation. We visited an old bakery existing for 3 generations. The owner in the 3rd generation told us, although modern machines can increase efficiency, we still stick to traditional methods, because only in this way can we preserve the authentic taste. This devotion and respect for traditions touched me deeply. In many places, traditional cultures gradually disappear under the onslaught of modernity, but Canadians found a balance between tradition and modernity. The next point of our route became Vancouver, the jewel of the Pacific. If Quebec represents tradition, then Vancouver demonstrates successes in adaptation to modernity. Tall glass buildings, lively beaches, and modern infrastructure, all this spoke of the power of this city. But what impressed me most was the success in environmental harmony. Stanley Park and the Olympic legacy were integrated into the city for tourists and locals. We walked along the seawall and met a retired teacher who was jogging. He told us about the city's green initiatives. Decades ago, we made choices to protect this view. And now look what beauty. This is the pride of us Vancouverites. The success in environmental integration showed me the determination and achievements of Canada in the field of sustainable development. Experience of Vancouver is worthy of study. The 3rd station became Banff National Park in the Rocky Mountains. From Ottawa to Calgary, we flew by plane. From there, we drove to the mountains. Impressions of Banff are primarily the pristine beauty of nature. The turquoise water of Lake Louise, the glaciers, the endless forests. All this took my breath away. But even more importantly, I felt the importance of nature conservation. We took part in a cleanup action on a trail with a local environmental group. Seeing the vastness of the wilderness, I acutely felt the urgency of environmental protection. One of the park rangers said to us, "These mountains are the water towers of the continent. Protecting them, we protect our future." This action helped me better understand that environmental protection is not only the responsibility of the government, but requires the participation of everyone. In Banff, we also had the opportunity to get acquainted with the lifestyle of locals who live in harmony with nature. Their life philosophy inspired me. In the flow of modernity, we often forget about the connection with nature, but these people reminded us of the importance of this connection. Every journey deepened my understanding of Canada and attachment to it. This country, though huge, amazes with its cultural diversity and richness. From west to east, from north to south, all cultural elements harmoniously coexist on Canadian soil. And most importantly, Canadians know how to preserve traditions, simultaneously developing and creating the new, without losing their roots. This cultural wisdom is worth learning. When the exchange program ended and I returned to Switzerland, I became a completely different person. Not only did my language skills improve, but more importantly, my way of thinking changed. I learned to look at problems from different angles and appreciate cultural differences. Returning to Switzerland, I began to actively participate in public life. I founded a club for the study of Canadian culture at my university to introduce others to the beauty of Canada. I began to participate in projects to improve social engagement, hoping to apply educational concepts I learned in Canada, especially methods of fostering social responsibility and environmental consciousness in students. My friendship with Liam continues. We began to plan a youth exchange project between our countries, hoping that more young Swiss can get acquainted with Canadian culture and invite Canadian students to Switzerland for mutual study of cultures. At home, in Zurich, I began to apply the way of life I learned in Canada. I participate in environmental actions in my district, observe order in public places, and help those in need. Although these are small changes, I believe they can cause a chain reaction. Seeing my changes, my family and friends also began to be interested in Canada. They wanted to know how this distant country so changed me. Thanks to my stories, many became interested in Canada. Some friends even began to plan a trip or study in Canada. Now I am preparing to enter a master's program in Canada. I hope for even deeper study, and in the future will be able to contribute to the development of relations between our countries. That unexpected emergency landing really changed my life path. If not for this experience, I would never have known such a wonderful country as Canada and would not have received these priceless life lessons. The most important thing Canada taught me is that true progress comes from spiritual growth. Not external wealth, but internal fullness. That is what is main. When you think about others, think about society, it becomes better. This principle is applicable not only to Canada, but to the whole world. Now I have a dream. In the future, I want to become a cultural ambassador connecting Canada and Switzerland so that the peoples of both countries understand each other deeper, to promote cooperation in the field of education, culture, and youth exchanges. And the starting point of this dream was that emergency landing at Macdonald-Cartier Airport. Sometimes the best in life comes from unexpected opportunities. That emergency landing seemed like a failure, but for me, it was the greatest luck. It helped me open a new world and a new self. This beautiful country gave me not only knowledge and skills, but, more importantly, a dream and hope. It made me believe that thanks to efforts and sincerity, we can make the world better. Now, looking back on that first night at Ottawa Airport, I lay in the hotel in the market and did not know what would happen next. Then I could not even imagine that just a few days of experience would so deeply change my life. The gift that Canada gave me is not just good memories, but a new view on life and new values. Now I am proud that I am a friend of the Canadian people, and I hope that in the future I can contribute to the friendship between our countries on this earth. That unexpected landing became the most important turning point in my life. Thank you, Canada. Thank you, hospitable Canadian people. Thank you, Liam, and everyone who extended a hand of help to me. This story continues. My journey in Canada is not finished. It will continue all my life and will be the driving force leading me forward. That is all for today. How did you like the story of a Swiss student who got acquainted with an advanced culture thanks to an emergency landing in Canada during a trip to the USA? Please leave your comments to support the main character of this story. If you liked this story, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.